It's a good start, however.
I'll leave this here.
You can sit.
Sorry, I'm just focused on the other things.
Now I can.
It's a good start.
Okay, we are good to go, Mayor. Thank you for your patience.
All right, let's call to order this meeting of the Council Boards and Commissions Appointments Committee for Wednesday, February 11th. I'm Julie Boyd, the mayor.
I am Deanna Gwynn from Ward 4.
Vanessa Nordyke, Ward 7.
Shane Matthews, Ward 3.
And Councilor Nishioka, alternate, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Also
In
present.
the audience.
And Dan Atchison, City Attorney.
I'm Gretchen Bennett, Community Services Director.
Amy Johnson, Legal Department.
Well, thank you for coming during the early morning meeting today. This is the meeting of the City Council Boards and Commissions Appointments Committee. This is the first meeting that it's after transitioning the staff from the city manager's office to the legal department. So I appreciate your patience with us. Gretchen and Tammy have been great in helping us get transitioned, and we're still a work in progress. So hopefully we'll be able to run a good meeting for you. On today's agenda, we've got 3 different action items. We have no pending appointments we're bringing forward at this meeting. We're going to be doing that at a later meeting. First item on the agenda is background checks, and Gretchen Bennett, do you want to go ahead and start us off on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you know, we are going to be following council direction to implement a new procedure to conduct background checks on our current seated boards and commissions members, on our current applicants, and then moving forward. And so we're in process on that. We don't have that already executed. We're still working through the items on that. And one change that you'll experience is to allow for necessary processing time. We're going to begin to bring you the applications that are in the queue generally 30 days prior, because we want to ensure that we bring you people who've been through the background check process. So if somebody applies like the day before the meeting, we'll be a little less nimble because we won't have gotten them through the background process.
Can I add something to that?
Please, Dan, please.
So in the council rules for board and commission appointments, it talks about setting a deadline for applications, and that applications have to be submitted by the deadline. We haven't always been strict in adhering to that, but with this extra background check process, we are going to be establishing a deadline so folks can get their materials in, and we can get the applications processed and have them ready for the committee to consider.
Okay, anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. We also want to bring to your attention a recommendation that we would like to share. We would like to recommend to council. You might remember in our discussion on January 7th related to the Community Police Review Board and the Civil Service Commission, we have criteria by which, if a person meets that criteria, such as having a violent felony, their application would just not be processed for would be a disqual. We would recommend that, and that was only for violent felony. We would have a recommendation that we would offer to bring back to council that would require all of the criteria to become disqualifying. Further, I'd like to amend the report that was in your packets, because when we written to you in the packet, we made a distinction between the other boards and commissions and these two. But upon further reflection, to bring the volunteers in with the other city volunteers, it would stand to reason that we would utilize the city's criteria and disqualify people for all of the boards and commissions should they not meet the criteria. And the criteria is like, for example, a Measure 11 crime present on the report. We would allow an opportunity for an applicant who feels that we've come to information incorrectly to be able to clarify and correct the record and say, actually, you got this wrong, and then provide some factual evidence to substantiate. So there'd be that opportunity.
Can I add to that?
Please do, yeah.
So the process as we've been going through it is if there's an individual with a quote non-disqualifying incident on their criminal history, the process we were thinking is we would take that, we would have a do not pass recommendation from staff. It would come to the boards and commissions committee, and then you consider it. as we kind of learned from that previous process, without providing you all the information, you're kind of making a decision in a vacuum regarding what the criminal history was. So that kind of necessitates us providing you that criminal history. There's two concerns with that. One is that the applicant's privacy concerns. They're going to have their criminal history at a public meeting. That document lives forever on the city's website. Plus, there's also some criminal justice information system, CJIS concerns. The information that we're pulling is public record, but in some instances, there's additional background that's within the CJIS system that we can't publicly disclose. So there's ways to work around that. We could have the committee meet in executive session and things like that. That's a lot of process and a lot of uncertainties for you and for council, because that same process would then go to council if boards and commissions recommended appointing that person. So by turning these discretionary disqualifiers into mandatory disqualifiers, at the application stage, we run the criminal history. If someone has a history that would be a disqualifier, we let them know they've got the process for reconsideration at the staff level. And we're done at that point if they still have that criminal history there. That does limit the committee and council's discretion to consider applicants a bit. You know, if an applicant, I think we haven't really talked about this a lot, but if an applicant said, no, I really want to be considered and I'm okay with my criminal history being plastered on the city's website, we could come to the committee with that.
I think that's a good result, right? I mean, because it would necessitate process in everything. It would necessitate process when the applicant insists and with clear eyes about what that will entail and that, yeah, if you want us to go down this path, then all of a sudden we're going to be talking about your past. So no, I think that seems really well thought out.
And I think, you know, there's different flavors of misdemeanors.
True.
I could imagine a scenario where someone got arrested at a protest and has a misdemeanor on their record for whatever, and they may want to be in the Human Rights Commission. That may be something the committee and council wants to consider. There are different types of crimes at a different level of, you know, moral turpitude, so to speak, that you may want to consider in the applicant. I would like to leave that up to the applicant on whether they really want to go through that public process.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Me too.
It seems
So-
very fair to them.
I see a lot of head shaking yes, and a lot of people saying yes, we can go ahead and move forward on that basis. We'll bring that recommendation to this.
Thank you.
One question, is there a cost associated with now running background checks on everybody?
There is, we estimated the cost to be able to be within the existing budget. I should have brought that number.
5,000.
Yeah, it-
500.
Thank you, good memory. That sounds about right. And so we thought it was workable. We took account of the number of applications in the past year to arrive at that.
Did I hear you say 55?
65.
That's 6,500 is what I like going off of memory.
I couldn't remember. Okay,
And that's, and that may vary. We are, for volunteer background checks, we're looking at a different vendor right now that may cost less. So the 6,500, I think, was a high estimate. It get substantially less. Rough estimates are we get about 100 applications for boards and commissions a year. So, you know, that 100 times 65 is where you got that number from. It could get down to less than 1,000, depending on how they play out.
Wow. Okay, great.
great.
Sounds like progress. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And next item on the agenda, if we're ready to move beyond background checks, is the Hispanic Advisory Commission, and Gretchen's got some information for you.
I do. I wanted to circle back with you. You might remember that we had considered the idea, the proposal of a Hispanic Advisory Commission. And we first brought criteria to council by which to evaluate the idea. And then provided some analysis based on that criteria. And then at the committee's direction, went and visited the Equity Roundtable to gather their input. We've done that, and so we're just circling back with that update, and again, would have a staff recommendation to not launch that commission at this time. In visiting with the Equity Roundtable, the participants there identified several concerns with the idea of having a separate Hispanic Advisory Commission, challenges with representing such a large group of people in Salem and its diversity inherent. Concerns that the proposed model around doing events and activities don't reflect the current priorities in Salem related to the population and culture. They spoke well of the equity roundtable and liking the intersectionality of bringing different groups and different people to the same table to weigh in to the city on priorities and issues. So they basically wanted to hold up the current equity roundtable. They had concerns about how you'd work a membership of Hispanic Advisory Commission, and they were worried about staff capacity too. So they identified a number of those issues. No one disputes the critical importance, and I think our community member Jonathan spoke so well of, we need to hear from this population. It's such a huge and critical part of our Salem. And so how can we infuse that feedback and input into our existing governance structures better and more effectively, was an encouragement, a focus. So at this time, we don't have a recommendation to move forward, but of course it's your decision. I just wanted to circle back and give you that report.
Well, I agree with your recommendation. One thing I would recommend we consider doing, and I believe Gretchen, you mentioned this before, is just, redoubling our efforts to do outreach to the Latino community and make sure they know of boards and appointments, vacancies, and other leadership opportunities within the city. There's lots of groups we can engage with that we already know and work with, like Mano a Mano, for example. Latino Business Alliance would be a great example. Salem Kaiser Coalition for Equality, and there are other groups. Those are just the ones that occur to me off the top of my head. But I think you've done a really wonderful job vetting this, and I really appreciate being able to hear the feedback from the Equity Roundtable.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with the fact of reaching out to the community a little bit more to try to bolster the participation. I think in other times you guys have done that too. I think I'm just thinking back to the what was the Revenue Task Force? I think that had an LBA representative on it specifically.
I think that's right.
So I think I don't want to imply that you guys aren't doing that already, but I just think to try to bolster at least some of the participation.
Well, and maybe to establish some kind of a contact list, so when there is outreach or notification, it hits the right people
Yeah,
in the right places to be able to disseminate the information
great idea.
quickly
Yeah.
and efficiently.
Good.
And again, I too appreciate the effort and the discussion. It is super valuable for the whole community. So thank you.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is requirements for board and commission positions. This has been a recurring topic for council and for this committee. I want to go through a little background of how we got here, then we'll go through the specific recommendations. As you were aware, we started the governance project with Moss Adams in 2024. They brought forward their final recommendations, I think, in early 25, and we've been kind of working through that process since. Some of the recommendations include having annual reports and work plans and reviewing boards and commissions each year to determine if their mission is still aligned with city council policy, as well as whether they need to be expanded, sunsetted, combined, that sort of thing. Standardized bylaws and standardized naming conventions. So you'll use the terms boards and commissions kind of synonymously. A short term, such as the Revenue Task Force, we opted to use the term task force, so that's going to be kind of sort of the normal nomenclature for the short term ad hoc committees. The council member liaison framework that came to council a few months back, and that's ready to be adopted into the council rules. The council rules committee is meeting separately to bring that forward. We're hoping to have that in March, I believe. Revised application questions similar to the Revenue Task Force and the other groups where we had an expanded set of questions to getting more information from applicants. We've already made some changes to the application process. More changes are coming, but we're changing the software for that. So that's going to have to wait till midsummer until we're ready to do that. And then the eligibility qualification requirements. And we've got the table below that talks about the current status of some of the things that are already going on. I'll talk a little bit generally about the qualifications and kind of into that next attachment, which is the table. Council directed staff to review the qualifications and requirements for each of the governance groups. And recommend changes that would eliminate or modify overly specific qualifications, encourage more geographic diversity, and have a broad range of experience and background, and are more representative of the community. So some of the changes that have also arisen since we started that work were including a minimum age of 18 for board and commission members, except for the Youth Advisory Commission and the Human Rights Commission, which both have youth members.
I'm sorry, you said youth advisory.
The Youth Advisory Commission, the Human Rights Commission, they both have specific positions for youth members. Also, individuals should be limited to no more than 2 groups. And that would be except for the Budget Committee, which, and the Civil Service Commission, which would both require members of those groups to be only on that group.
What happens if there's someone currently serving like on the Civil Service Commission and they're on another board? Will they?
We're actually working on that issue right now because we made an error a few months back with a gentleman that was appointed, and we're discussing that with
That's
him,
why I
trying to
asked.
get him to pick which one he'd like to be on.
Okay.
So a lot of those changes are going to require an ordinance to change the code, and that'll be coming forward after this committee and the council has adopted recommendations. So the ordinance, as far as broadening the range of experience and life experience and professional experience that someone might have, the ordinance is going to contain a requirement that council and this committee would consider socioeconomic background as part of an applicant's membership qualifications, but it wouldn't be a requirement. You wouldn't have to say we need to have one position filling this type of role, one position filling that type of role, because they're trying to get away from that in general with these appointments. I think with that, I'll just turn to the table. The first box on the table just talks about general requirements we're going to be having, we're going to be recommending for all boards and commissions. One would be to require all members to be city residents, except for the Planning Commission, which allows but doesn't require one member to be within the UGB.
Can I ask a question about that? So Center 50 plus, one of the recommendations is community members must be a city resident. I called Marilyn right before this meeting and said, when you guys talked about that, did you consider folks in the Jan Ray area and parts of, east of Lancaster that are outside the city limits? I said, how many folks in that area use the services of Center 50 plus? And she said, oh, there's quite a few. And it would be a shame to not have their voice be heard because there's transportation issues. And she told me something else. So she felt like the committee would be open to including folks that are within the urban growth boundary and not just
Unincorporated.
That's certainly a consideration, and the committee can make that recommendation.
I would move to make that recommendation.
They're in the city of Salem. They're just unincorporated.
They're outside the city of Salem.
Right.
They're not paying taxes into the city of Salem.
So I would move to change that to within the urban growth boundary for Center 50 plus.
I don't have a problem with that.
We'll take that as a motion in a second. Any discussion?
Are you talking about for eligibility of all positions would be eligible if they're just within UGB, or is there a certain percentage or number that would be eligible?
I wouldn't want to limit the number of community members, but I didn't ask Marilyn about that.
I think there are some boards and commissions, like, say URA Advisory Board, that has a specific geographic area. I mean, there could be different factors to weigh into that, but I'm not sure that makes sense to have, someone, a Polk County resident, be on the North Gateway Urban Renewal Advisory Board. Plus, there's other requirements that require folks who own businesses or work at businesses or own property within the city. I think we could expand it, not just be a resident, or they work in Salem, own business in Salem, or own property in Salem as well,
Are we talking just Center 50 plus or
globally.
globally.
So, Counselor Gwen, are you recommending for the Center 50 plus, instead of, community members must be city residents, are you recommending that say community members must be residents within the urban growth boundary?
Yeah.
Is that the amendment you want to make? I would be in
Yes.
favor of that.
Can I clarify, is that specific to Center 50?
Yeah.
Is that, or is that global?
That, I was saying Center 50 plus
Yeah.
specifically.
So I guess my only hesitation, Center 50 plus funding comes from essentially tax dollars. Is that correct? And I mean, we fund the majority of their,
I think it's mostly general fund. Yeah, that's why we've had to do a livability levy,
right?
because it was, yeah. So right now, most of its funding comes from the livability levy that the voters passed.
Correct.
So
that
it's all
actually-
property tax
So that
dollars.
gives my hesitation, because that would mean that if we don't have some cap on how many of these members could be outside of city limits,
Mhm.
ultimately, you could have more representation on from people that aren't actually paying a tax into Center 50 plus.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a limiting factor for me. I understand wanting to have representation out there, so I'm good with having some position desired, not required, because I think we're getting away from
Right.
required. But desired to have at least some of those positions, whatever, I don't know how many positions are on that board total, be within UGB and not necessarily within city. But I do think that it's important that at least a majority remain within Salem city limits. I think it gets dangerous when you start having more voice than you have actual money.
May I?
Yeah,
ahead.
a
You go
quick
first.
point of clarification, the percentage of the budget from which is donations or contributions into classes and things like that is somewhat substantial. We've been exploring the possibility of getting to 50%. I would clarify, there is a substantial payer contribution into the as well, but not to take away from your point.
That's what I wanted to clarify too. Thank you.
Is that just most recent with that large donation they received, or is that something that's going to be in perpetuity?
No, it's something that's been in perpetuity, just as people pay to participate in some of the cases with some of the programs.
We've been working hard the last several budget years to make Center 50 self-sustainable, so it's not a general fund program, but it's a lot of programming.
Interesting. So I'm trying to, currently, there are 7 community at-large members. As at-large just means anywhere within Salem city limits. 6 community members who are 50 and older. So this is one of our larger boards, right?
Mhm.
Plus the 8 partner members is what currently is what the makeup is. So the reason is I'm trying to go to your question, like how many total members are you recommending? So under the provisions, it says on the right, increase community members to 8. Do you mean, which of those community members do you mean, the 7 at large or the 6 who are 50 and older?
So right now, there's a 15-member commission, so you've got the community at-large members, which right now is limited to city residents. I'm sorry, Councilor Gwen.
Well, my only question is, like, how many people currently serve on that commission? Because it seems like that's one where we've had quite a few vacancies as well. So even though we have slots for 15 people, I don't think we currently have 15
I
serving.
think there's only one vacancy this time.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I was thinking about pulling it. I don't think it would share that.
Oh,
I think
That's-
points well taken, though, there are vacancies from time to
Right.
time.
Perfect.
that's right.
So is there a suggestion then that we limit the number of folks
Not
within the urban growth boundary to maybe 2 people, desired, not required, but allowed?
I think that would be great. I think that's workable and provides some flexibility as well as gets that input from folks outside the city. So
Cool.
you wanna-
Is that a motion? That's a
That's an
motion.
amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's call it a substitute motion. We can just put it once.
Second?
Second.
Okay. And everybody okay with that? Yes?
Deanna, and
Sure.
you gonna, this is your thing
Yeah.
first.
No, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just
So-
wanted some representation now.
Well, and clarity, that's the whole point of this effort, right?
So if I can be clear, so that for Center 50 plus, it will be 2 members may be within the UGB,
Mhm.
outside the city, but within the UGB.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I do want to ask,
Thank you.
I think Center 50 plus, and it says it here, they have 8 partner members. The suggestion to bring it down to 7. those partner members don't necessarily have to be within city limits, they're residents, do they? With our new guidelines here, because I mean, if the hospital appoints someone that doesn't live within the city, but they're their representative.
Correct. So if there's a representative of a institution such as for Center 50 Plus, as long as the institution, I mean, based on how that particular committee requirements are, yeah, the actual person doesn't need to be a city resident.
Okay, perfect.
So I need a moment to kind of review all the other requirements. I thought the Youth Advisory Commission had been disbanded. I don't see it in this list.
I think that's a very end. No, it's not. Let's put a pin in that if we can.
Sure, no problem.
So the other two general requirements are just as I talked about before, encouraging geographic diversity, so war dispersion generally, as well as a diversity in life experience and socioeconomic background. Again, those are going to be considerations for this committee and council. They wouldn't be strict requirements.
Yeah, my recollection from speaking up in prior board and appointment committee meetings when we were talking with Moss Adams was I really liked the revenue task force questions. They weren't hard and fast rules. They were just questions like, have you ever worked minimum wage? I thought that life experience is helpful. I worked minimum wage. So I thought that was helpful. Do you speak a language other than English in the home as your primary language? There were things that, again, they just gave me a fuller picture of the kinds of individuals who were seeking board service. So are those questions being included in the application?
Yeah, we've amended quite a few of those questions. We went through that revenue task force
Yeah.
at your direction and added as many of those questions that we could into the current format.
Right?
I think there were a couple that structurally we needed to wait for the new software, but they're largely in there now.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Great.
so as you get new applications, you'll start seeing that information.
Cool. Great.
And then if we can go to the next one down, CPRB. The CPRB had recommended some requesting some clarification on what these factors mean. So if you recall, there are no strict requirements except for a few to CPRB. The rest of the factors are just consideration, like criminal history, residency in Salem, align with the goals of the board, life experience, or training in cultural or ethnic diversity, things like that. Those are all just factors to consider. What the CPRB, and I think Gretchen can speak to it probably better than I can, but we're looking for what does that mean to council? Is some criminal history a good thing or a bad thing, you know, for this particular board? How are you interpreting these criteria? And to provide some clarification to the applicants so they know what you're looking for. And then they also recommended geographic diversity, so more representative of the community, and then to add more alternate members to avoid problems with reaching a quorum. Currently, there are 2 alternate members. We're recommending just to change those alternates into full members instead. I'm not sure adding more alternates is in my opinion anyway, a good way to address quorum issues. I think we need to be more, thoughtful of scheduling meetings and making sure folks know and making sure they know the importance of attending and having meetings that are substantive so they want to attend. No offense to staff, but it's just there's a lot of times with CPRB in particular when there's not a lot on the agenda just because there aren't any cases to review. So there's been that hasn't been the case for the past several months, but in the past that's been an issue.
Yeah, and I will say when I was on CPRB, I was a little bit surprised that we kept meeting like clockwork, whether we had a case or not. I'm like, I feel like we're meeting for the sake of meeting. So, and knowing how your bandwidth is so stretched, I would encourage staff to don't meet for the sake of meeting whenever possible, right?
Is there anything in council rules currently, or maybe that's council boards and commission rules? I know that we asked in our application, are you going to be able to make X amount of meetings, right? Project what your future looks like. But is there any type of rule that if you don't make X amount of meetings that, the
You're
recommendation would be to come
You're
back
done.
to us to have?
There is, we have a 75% expectations are.
Mhm.
And then if a person isn't meeting 75%, you begin with conversations, are you gonna get there? But ultimately, if that's not succeeding, there's a letter that can go out from the mayor's desk that says, hey, we're not seeing you. Can you please contact us within this period of time, or we're gonna need to to removal so that we can reactivate that.
So there is already a process in place.
There is, yeah.
I've only signed one of those so far.
Okay.
Yeah, super often. Normally it can get dealt with at the inquiry level, like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right, I can't make this meeting anymore, and
Mhm.
then that gets resolved.
So I know we have about 20 minutes left. I can go over, I don't know if y'all can, and I don't want to keep you after, but I'll try to get through these a little bit quicker. So I started reading, so verbose. On the CPRB, one suggestion that I had and staff had is that there was a new requirement to make a victim of a felony crime a mandatory position. So my concern is that hopefully we don't have that many victims of felony crime in the community. And there might be questions about trying to fill that position. My suggestion would be to make that a desirable,
Yeah.
but not a requirement.
I agree with that personally. Shane, what's your?
Is your idea, Shane?
Yeah,
What do you think?
he's the one that.
Well, I'd be curious to know, I'd be curious to know what the police thought about that. And so I think before I made any judgment on that, I'd be curious to know what the Salem PD felt about that, since they're the ones that will be judged by this board. So if they were okay with it being moved from a mandatory or a mandatory thing down to a desire, then I'm fine with that.
I think we're gonna need to come back and talk about all these again, so that's fine. We can reach out. The Community Tourism and Promotional Advisory Board, CTEAB. Current requirements has to be a resident or business owner in Salem, and one representative of the nonprofit tourism industry. And CTPAB had no recommended changes. And my suggestion was that these are sometimes the way the appointment process is worded in the code is a little awkward. Sometimes it says the mayor recommends to council, and sometimes it says the council recommends to the mayor. Other times it just says council appoints or mayor appoints. This sort of recommendation process seems a little awkward to me. So my suggestion would be to change the council appoints upon a recommendation of mayor to just council appoints. Because we haven't really been following that in past practice anyway often.
So in
So
other,
it would just be a straight council appointment.
okay, so in other words, it wouldn't go to the mayor anymore, it would go to Boards and Appointments Committee.
The way it's supposed to work is that it would go to the mayor would consider the applicants and make recommendations to this committee. This committee would then make recommendations to council, and council would then make the appointment. If this change happens, the applications would come to this committee would make recommendations to council.
Mayor, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would rather have consensus than authority, personally, so. But that's me.
Yeah, it doesn't prevent the mayor from saying, no, I don't like that appointment, or I think someone else should be appointed. It just kind of streamlines the process a little bit.
It also just removes any perception of, preferential decision-making, and I think that's valuable.
Yeah.
So.
Well said.
So the DAB has been one of those boards and commissions that I think has caused the ire of this committee quite often with the varied and numerous types of position requirements.
What does DAB stand for?
Downtown Advisory Board. So a little background, Downtown Advisory Board is a amalgamation of the Urban Renewal, Riverfront Downtown Urban Renewal Advisory Board and the Advisory Board for the Parking District. They've been combined into one, which is one of the reasons there's so many weird position requirements for this one, because we're trying to represent the interests of both of those communities. So I won't list all the current requirements, but I will say that the DAB recommended decreasing the business or property owners from the current 6 to 4 members, and increasing the members representing residents in the area from 1 to 3. I had a little bit different take on that, but and my recommendations are more of just to allow more flexibility. So instead of let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, I think it's 11-member commission. My suggestion would be to have 3 members representing residents of the area, 2 at-large members, so that could be outside of the area. 6 representing business owners, property owners, or employees within the area, with a preference for members with banking, finance, or commercial real estate experience, and then eliminate the institutional position.
I have a question. The top bullet point on the far right says 3 representing interests of residents in the area. Is there a reason why we don't just say 3 residents in the area?
That's the current language, so I didn't alter that.
Because it could be a business owner of some kind, it doesn't live.
Yeah, it could be a landlord who doesn't actually live downtown is my worry with that language.
But then they would also qualify under a property owner,
Right,
right?
It's so, and I want to be clear, that's not a concern of mine. I think if they have interest in that area, they should have voice, whether they live there or not.
Mhm. And so that's like Councilor Roddick said, those, if you have own property or work in the area or run a business in the area, there are positions for that.
right.
So again, it's just as representing the interests of, I think the committee, if the language is kept the same, then the committee and council will consider whether the applicant truly does represent the interests of a resident versus someone who owns property.
We have so many more residential properties downtown. I would rather see that say 3 residents in the area instead of representing.
It'll be a lot easier to determine because then you
Right.
can just look on the address given on the application.
Was that where you were going to?
Yes, I mean, yeah, exactly, because in 3 representing interests now implies more process, more vetting. We debate at this level, whereas if we just said 3 residents, all we have to do is look at their address. Are they in apartment 109 at the Rivenwood? Guess what? You qualify. I think that the fact that they're this very next, well, the second or third down bullet point means that landlords downtown still have a seat at the table if they want it.
Well, and technically though, a resident would too, being a property owner, right? If
If they're not a rent. If they're a
right,
renter,
if
that-
they're, so maybe 3 residents
Mhm.
is maybe that's too many. Only because if they're a property owner and they live downtown, they would qualify on bullet number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's renters downtown and the
Right.
only way they get on is either as an at-large position, which
Right.
means you're now competing with the entire city applicant pool,
Or a resident.
or interests of residents. So I mean, to me, I think renters need to have a seat at the table too.
I agree.
I think my thought is just the top bullet point, say 3 residents in the area, period. They can be either property owners or renters, and some downtown residents might also be landlords, but I mean, I just want to create a pathway for people who don't own real estate downtown, be a part of.
I just think maybe 3 is too many.
You think so?
You want 2?
Weighted too heavy,
You want 2?
maybe.
Would you feel better about 2
I
positions?
would feel better with 2.
I'm not opposed to that.
How many people are on this board?
11. So
I'm
3 is almost a third.
okay with 3. I think, I mean, when we look at the resident aspect, only because, I mean, that's gonna be their livelihood, like, they're the ones having to live
They
with
gotta be
anything that's
there.
happening downtown, so I think 3 is fair. I think my bigger concern, well, not bigger, I shouldn't say bigger, but I'm trying to figure out how preference for members with banking, finance, and commercial real estate experience fall into an 11-person board, because I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 to 11, so we've got 11 that are, of the 3 bullet points, all 11 have some version of a representation or a restriction. And so I'm trying to figure out, I guess just logic would have to go in for any of the board members on this, because I have 6 commercial real estate positions end up applying for the board. I don't want them to take up all 6 business owner spots. And so that's the only
Yeah.
downside to how we're taking away kind of this restrictions on, like, oh yeah, we want 2 of these type of positions and 1 of this type of position. I just don't want it to be where now all of a sudden our weighting system is like, well, technically all of these
They meet all
people
the
meet all
criteria.
of this criteria, and we have a preference for this, and so that's my only fear of like how we're drafting these out. But I suppose logic on this board, I think this makes sense for this board. that we can probably work past that and say, once we've got 3 of those people on this board, probably don't need to fill the other 3 with the same, but.
I may be making your jobs more difficult, but you know, one of the other requirements is, you know, diversity in life experience as well. So you're gonna be looking at, this guy's got great banking experience versus this guy's got great life experience, and you'll weigh that accordingly. If you've got 4 bankers in DAB already, maybe the life experience
Takes
weighs
preference.
heavily.
Okay, yeah, as far as the residents, I'm good with the residents of 3.
Well, thank you for that. I'm still questioning, why is a preference for the banking / finance / commercial real estate desired anyway? You know, to me, when I think of our downtown core, yes, we do have downtown banks, right? We've got US Bank, Key Bank,
Pioneer Trust.
Pioneer Trust. So sure,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of restaurants downtown, and we know, for example, and we know from the survey, the Beep Beep parking survey, that's like the #1 reason why people go downtown is restaurants. I don't
Can
understand.
I respond to that?
Yeah, I'd like to know where is this preference coming from?
This preference comes from the original Riverfront Downtown Advisory Board.
Okay,
And so we're looking at making substantial capital investments into developments. There's folks who are providing us pro formas. As you saw with some of the projects that have come out of the Riverfront Downtown in the last several years,
Mhm.
there's a fair amount of complex mathy stuff that, you know, I'm not good at. But someone who understands finance, someone who understands how to get together investments and, you know, whether our $500,000, $750,000 contribution makes sense in terms of that development. I think that can be helpful.
Economic
Okay,
development.
that's a fair point.
Keeping downtown viable.
I think the other piece from the commercial real estate aspect is they're one of the only positions that get a view of why someone wouldn't want to come into our downtown, or what's restricting our downtown. You know, a business owner as a restaurateur, yes, they get the view of the consumer's experience, but they don't get the view of the person that's not investing in your downtown area where a commercial agent does. And so I think that's where their experience for me
Is
comes out.
valuable, yeah.
And
That makes sense. Thank you. That helps explain it. So the preference, would that apply to any of these positions? Or, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how do you word that in the application?
As proposed, yes, we could limit it to the 6 business property owner or employee positions.
I don't see a reason to limit it. I think if you qualify in any way, if you are a resident and you happen to be a commercial real estate agent, great. If you aren't a commercial real estate agent or you are a commercial real estate agent and you're not a resident, well, then you can't qualify for the 3, but you can fit into the 6. And so I think having the flexibility is fine, and personally.
All right,
I agree
fine
with
with
that.
that.
And I wanted to note that this would eliminate the institutional position. This would be Willamette, Western Oregon School District, Salem Health is mentioned specifically. So this would eliminate a position just for that. Not that you couldn't appoint someone from that group, but it wouldn't be a mandatory position.
I'm fine with that.
Me too.
So North Gateway Redevelopment Advisory Board, they had no recommendations and we're not proposing any changes. We're hoping to close out that area in the relatively near future. So I think we just go past that one if that's okay. There was discussions early on with this governance project about combining the urban renewal advisory boards into one mega advisory board. Given that this one's closing out and we're hoping to move forward with some other ones, we're not recommending that at this time. SPRAD, Parks and Recreation, they and staff recommend eliminating the Salem Kaiser School District position and then modifying the forestry, arboriculture, or horticulture position. On the Salem Kaiser position, past practice for parks in the school district has been to combine city parks with school properties and allow sort of joint use. That's been kind of disfavored by both parties over the last 10, 15 years. It hasn't worked out well because school districts have a concern about keeping their campus safe and secure. And so the public use hasn't been there on the school properties. And then there's been issues the other way around. So both parties have kind of gone away from that. So eliminating that position is, from our perspective, makes sense. Let's see, I'm trying to remember what exactly the Parks Board Recreation recommendation was to modify these positions. And it's escaping me, so I think maybe we can come back to that, and I apologize, I can get you better information. Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. I think they wanted to make it more general, so you didn't have to have a specific agriculture, a specific horticulture.
Yeah, I mean, it says on the right, make it desired but not mandatory. Is that what you meant, or is there something?
That's my recommendation. Their recommendation was not to eliminate it, to still require those, but to make it more broad, so you could have, I believe it was like 1 or 2 people that meet any of those requirements as opposed to 1 for each, but I want to be
Okay.
more specific on that one.
If you like, I could go grab my computer and try to look that up during this,
We're
or
gonna-
we're
we're
gonna
gonna-
come back anyway. Okay, great.
Library Advisory Board, there are no requirements for the Library Advisory Board. The board recommended that appointees have a library card, that you also have a youth member, and you encourage geographic diversity or limit the number from each ward. I agree with all those recommendations. My thought would be to clarify that they have to have a library card at the time of application, and that the youth member is a desired quality but not mandatory.
Is this another where we're requiring city residency? Because that's under general, you have city residency, but we have people from all over who use our library.
That's correct. So my recommendation is city residents. So if that's not a good recommendation, we can clarify that.
So like,
I have friends that are outside that are on that board, so that's why I'm like,
when we look at how explain to me how the library card system works right now. So like, for instance, if you're a Kaiser resident, you can still get a library card with us. So you can still qualify for that have library card aspect. Is that right?
I believe so.
But you're limited in how much you're able to check out.
Gretchen may
I
know.
think that's correct. I don't remember the details, but you can get an out of area card,
Mhm.
and then there are some different limitations.
yeah, you can
I don't
only,
remember the
as an
numbers.
adult, you can only take,
Excellent. So,
yeah, it's like 10 or 12, I can't remember, at a time, but I mean, it's still
but it's still a
a
lot.
hefty amount of
I
books.
think right now, as a resident, you take 50. So yeah.
No, I think it's unlimited if you're within the city limits.
And my reasoning for city resident, again, and particularly with the local option levy funding the library, is those are city residents who are paying the levies.
Mhm.
I understand, it's a community resource, goes well beyond the city, but as far as making decisions from an advisory board basis, that was my rationale for that.
So do we want to require city residency for the library board?
I think right now it already is, right?
No,
Or that
I
would-
know it's no, there's no.
But we'd be
Oh, that would
proposing
be
that
the
in the
proposal,
overall.
right? Yeah.
So if you wanted to amend this as you did C50, I think is the question.
That's interesting.
That's correct.
I appreciate the point about the taxpayers.
Mhm.
They're the ones.
Do folks outside the city limits pay a fee? I know because I used to live outside the city limits and I had to pay for a
Not
card,
anymore, right?
but
I feel like there's a modest out of city cost, but I should double check myself.
We're also a member of the CCRLS, which allows interlibrary loans, and folks within the CCRLS have additional rights.
Should we get a little more information on staff before we make the final decision on
Sure.
this? Just in the interest of time?
Yeah.
maybe the city librarian or, I don't know, or the board itself.
Okay, so West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board. Their recommendations was just basically broadening it a bit. So the current requirement, one of the current requirements is 4 members representing interests of business owners, property owners, and residents in the area. And they propose changing that to 4 representing interests of business owners, property owners, or residents in the area.
They recommend, that's their.
The middle one is their
Got it.
recommendation. And then for industrial owner, it's the strict requirement that there is an owner of an industry within the area. And then the industrial owner or representative would be their recommended change.
I think staff's recommendation is fine by me. I don't have a strong opinion on it. candidly.
Airport Advisory Commission, I didn't get any recommendations from them. The only thing on this one that's a little quirky in my mind is there's a requirement for 2 active pilots and their specifications on the type of license they have. I don't think it's been a big issue. The airport community is pretty active and they haven't had, in my opinion, as far as I know, they haven't had a big problem filling the positions, so no change recommended for them.
Having been to many of those meetings now, their input is so valuable. You know, we just have perspectives that people who don't fly don't.
Currently, it looks like they have 4 active pilots. So, on
Which makes
out of the
sense.
4, so.
Why would you want to be part of it? Engage with it, like, I mean, I guess maybe there is a reason, but it makes sense. You'd have a lot of pilots.
Okay, Center 50. So currently there's 7 community at-large members and 6 of those members must be 50 or older. And then there's 8 partner members. And the code is a little ambiguous in that it lists a series of what constitutes a community partner. That is not an exclusive list. Council gets to decide what is a community member within that broad definition. To make it a little more flexible, there were no recommendations from Center 50, but my recommendation would be to increase the community members to 8 and decrease the partner members to 7, just to allow more flexibility. You could still appoint a community member that is associated with one of those partner member institutions. They just wouldn't represent them. They would represent their own interests.
What are our partner? Oh, sorry.
I apologize. If I may, we might want to bring this one back because the C50 did have recommendations. Maybe it just didn't get to your desk. Yeah, but I didn't mean to.
That's fine. If we're gonna bring it back anyway, I just was curious, and maybe you just said it, and I just didn't quite understand what you were saying, but so the partner members, do we have designated partners that we're trying to fill spots for, or we choose the partner at the time of the?
It's a little bit of what's in the code versus practice. The code lists a series of partner members, but they're not required partner members. They're just examples of partners. In practice, it's been pretty much those members with not a lot of changes, but I think I think people didn't realize they could pick new partners if they wanted to.
Yeah, okay.
Currently, those partners online, it's the Alzheimer's Association, Healthcare Organization, not specified, Friends of Salem Senior Center, Northwest Senior and Disability Service. Those are the ones that are listed anyway.
And all those are currently reflected on the board.
Excellent.
We'll get through one more here and then we're getting up to 10 o'clock, and so I would check in to see how folks are doing. Civil Service Commission. So again, it's a little awkward because there's a state law that has a series of requirements for civil service commissions as well as our charter provisions. The state law says you must do X, Y, and Z, but then it says that the local jurisdiction can modify those rules if they want. So the charter provisions do apply. The state law provisions where they conflict with the charter don't apply. So that's where staff was confused on whether a civil service member can only be on civil service. The charter is more restrictive than state law and basically says you can't be an employee, you can't be a public official for the city, you can only be on civil service. So because we don't have a civil service commission, we didn't get recommendations from the commission. My recommendations are to modify the charter to be consistent with state law and create an SRC chapter that reflects what's in the charter, so it's not so vague as far as what the requirements are. Charter amendments require a vote of the people. We can table that until folks can talk about amending the charter.
And that recommendation is wise and will be ready when there is a CFC, right?
Wasn't our intention to also add all the criminal history criteria to civil
That's good.
CSC? So I think all of that needs to be copied and pasted from the CPRB. Those first 2 bullet points are CPRB, I think.
So we have reached 10 o'clock. We've got several more to go, probably at least an hour. I think it's probably, plus we need to come back on several items that we talked about already. So I think I can keep going or we can table this till the next meeting.
May I ask the process for this? We make these recommendations and then it will go to council.
Right,
Okay.
and part of that will be me drafting an ordinance for first reading for council consideration. I think what I'll probably do, and haven't really thought this through completely, is have a staff report, probably on special orders of business, similar to this, with your recommendations, and then the subsequent meeting, once we've got consensus from council on those actions, would be first reading of an ordinance.
So that can't happen until we get through all of these.
Correct.
So we do need to meet again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if, these are a lot of, there's 17, 18 boards and commissions, there's a lot of changes here. If you want to take these piecemeal to council, such as the residency requirement, although I don't think we're through with that yet, it's just an example. We could take that, we could take it in blocks to council saying, okay, here's some requirements we're going to change. We're going to bring another one in another month once the committee's gone through the process.
Just my first reaction to that is I don't want it to be confusing for council or the public.
Mhm.
You know, it seems like to bring the whole pie when we're done with the work, the majority of the work, then it simplifies the decision-making process at the council level.
The only thing that I might suggest is for CPRB, not CPRB, but the CPRB, the Police Review Board, and maybe Civil Service. We have those background check requirements as well as the victim requirement. We might bring that forward just so we have that in code, just so we can move forward with appointments for those two.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Trust your judgment on that.
And so I appreciate your patience as we've gotten through this process, but as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking it on. I think we're gonna be in a better place all the way around when we're done with this work.
Thank you.
So are we done?
Sure.
Okay, we're adjourned.
That's what it said.
I'll check on the.
So
Yeah, I thought.
what I do is I go in here
I think that
Never-
exists.
never
more.
discussion.